Do you maybe have an unfinished drawing you always wanted to complete? An art supply you always wanted to try out, but you're too afraid it might turn out bad? You took a long break from drawing and just can't get back into it? Stop making excuses. Stop making up excuses in your head to stay right where you are and not move a millimeter forward. Self-sabotage as an artist is more than real, and I've been extremely guilty of all the excuses I'll talk about in this video. I'm hoping you can also relate to these struggles, and by naming these issues, I'm aiming to create more intentional awareness so that we can get more control over our inner demons. I will show you my personal experiences, and while I talk, you will see some footage of me drawing this vibrant galaxy portrait with colored pencils on this beautiful black paper. After I finished my sketch, I printed it out, and just in case you were wondering how I got it onto the black paper, I used graphite transfer paper to get the job done. I traced the lines with an orange color pencil so I would see which lines I already traced. The transferring didn't work as well as I was hoping it would, but those light black lines were enough for me to get started. And that brings me to my number one talking point. Stop making excuses to avoid getting started. You can make excuses because you might have a fear of failing. I'm sure we've all been there at this point. I mean, show me artists who were always confident in their skills, knowing everything will turn out great. You're not alone with this. I have a fear of failing all the time. Like, for example, with this drawing I'm working on right now. I never drew on black paper ever before. It intrigued me, I had some ideas, but did I know it would work? Definitely not. This could as well have been a massive failure. There's always a possibility of failing, especially if you try out new things, but that shouldn't hold you back of getting started. Instead, embrace failing. In fact, don't even try to run from it. Trust me, you will fail sooner or later. Actually, the sooner the better. Failure will let you grow even bigger and learning from what does and does not work for you. I fail quite often myself and I get frustrated over it, but then I let it go and try again, or I try something else. Going into the future, I definitely want to keep my failed attempts as footage because I really want you to see everything is an up and down, and fear of failing shouldn't hold you back so much that you don't even start. It is simply inevitable. Another habit you can develop for not getting started can be to keep delaying projects over and over again. I know this all too well, where you maybe have this vision of a great artwork and you keep adding on ideas to it up to the point where you just won't start and keep yourself trapped in the cycle of idea hunting and brewing over it to avoid actually getting started with it. In that case, I would recommend pushing that project aside for a while and focusing on other smaller projects, or maybe even some small studies. And sometimes a fresh take on everything might hit you when it's most unexpected. But in the meantime, don't do nothing. Another excuse for getting started, which intertwines with delaying your project, might be, I just don't have the time. Now, in my opinion, there are two sides on the medal here. There are definitely times when you simply do not have the capacity to create, because maybe you're just dealing with more substantial things in life. I'm talking about, for example, health issues, them being either physical or psychological. And listen, there will be times when art cannot be the number one priority in your life, and I do acknowledge that. Some people say you can always make time for what you love, and I softly disagree. There are exceptions to this where you simply cannot make time for creating art, and I think it's important to not beat yourself up over this. Life can get messy and out of control, so be patient with it. That being said, if your life is in, let me name it, standard mode, which means you're living your normal, average, everyday life, you shouldn't make excuses. I'm guilty of this, and I'm gonna be a bit brutal with myself here, but before I moved to America, I was working full-time in my 40 to 50 hour week, depending on overtime, and I was really burned out, drained, and empty. Those were tough times with a toxic job. However, if I'm being absolutely honest with myself, I made the excuse of not having time, although I could have made some. Yes, I desperately needed the weekends to recharge, but there were definitely time frames I could have used more wisely. So be honest with yourself. Do you really have no time to get started? Or are you just making things a little bit more convenient for yourself? My last excuse to not get started is money. And it's very easy to use because who of us is actually rich and can afford every art supply they want whenever they want it? You keep telling yourself, I wish I could have art supply XY. It would make things so much easier. Or I will start again once I get this tablet. Or I do it, but I just can't afford a big canvas now. Oh, stop. Art isn't asking of you to spend all your money. In fact, you can get started with very few cheap materials. Hey, my favorite and most used tools are just pencils, erasers, and regular paper. Don't let that hold you back. You can always make something work, and if you can't afford pricey colors to paint with right now, maybe for the time being, just work on some basic studies. It's not complicated unless you make it complicated. Okay, next I want to talk about something that might follow the excuse of getting started, which is making excuses to avoid keeping going. Keeping up a certain momentum can be crucial to keep the flow of creating and exploring to ultimately improve. But in the past, I had a lot of crunched phases where I drew some pieces and then had a few months of doing nothing until I created drawings again. Losing that momentum in between was fatal for me in my development, and there were two things I remember telling myself to not keep going. One of them was resting on success, and I don't mean major breakthroughs or becoming financially successful. I'm just talking about something simple like succeeding with an idea you had and being really satisfied and proud with the outcome. I would then sometimes unconsciously lay back and take a big break from drawing because I accomplished something big for my standards and I deserve to rest now, right? An example I can show is this drawing here, which is from 2021, and I was really proud I tried a new combination of graphite shading with flat gouache shapes, and I still do like this page very much, but I remember after being proud of this, I rested on this success for a long time and didn't keep the flow going, which I do very much regret. The other excuse in the category of not keeping going was waiting for inspiration to randomly kick in. This too is a very convenient excuse because you can easily tell yourself inspiration is out of your hands. It is just a magical force hitting you eventually, or it won't, and you just have to wait until it one day does. Inspiration is a big topic in general, and I do want to make a video in the future about it, but for now I want to shift the focus on the misbelief of inspiration being an uncontrollable force. With this thinking, you might wait for years to continue your artistic journey. We don't have time for this. Don't just sit back and pray to the inspiration god to gift you with mind-breaking visions. You are in charge to spark your inspiration, and sure, not all the time can we force creative thinking on ourselves, but we can definitely create a habit of circling around topics like colors and themes that inspire us. Everyone has preferences and what they like. Some people might be really inspired by flowers, others by certain animals. And when you're looking for inspiration, you can always come back to your favorite things in life and browse around. Me, for example, I'm working on this galaxy drawing because I kind of remembered I'm actually really passionate about science fiction and the universe itself, its mystery, philosophy, and beauty. So this is definitely a source of inspiration for me I can come back to. Alright, moving on to my number 3 talking point. Stop making excuses and leave your comfort zone. This includes staying where it's most comfortable. And by staying there, you lock away possible improvement you would gain by thinking outside the box. For example, I discovered a new comfort zone for myself last year: portrait studies. It was very convenient for me to do study after study. It didn't require any creativity, therefore no inspiration, just studying a reference. I was walking on a slippery path because I desperately needed and still need studies to improve my understanding of human faces and anatomy me. However, I now want to equally improve the creative aspect of it. And being in your comfort zone also includes your favorite materials. That's why my goal for this year is to try out new art supplies and use them in a creative and not just an analytical way. So far, I'm really happy with what I tried this January, from an illustration combining more real graphite shading with abstract fine liner hair, to my first pastel pencil drawing with a rainbow color range, to now drawing the galaxy portrait. I'd say I definitely left my comfort zone, not copying a reference for simply studying, but to adjust and change it and add imaginary elements to it to be more on the creative side of things. And speaking about this drawing, this black paper is actually a hot pressed 100% cotton paper, which has a very soft texture to it. And I knew it wasn't made for colored pencils, and I tested it a bit prior, but I noticed I had to be really careful and gentle with drawing on it. And by the end, I actually damaged the surface quite a bit, which you can't really see from a front view, but in the future I would definitely use different paper for this approach. However, I enjoyed the galaxy theme in combination with the colored pencils tremendously and discovered something new for myself here. While I was coloring this, I already collected inspiration for future illustrations and can't wait to create a whole series of galaxy portraits. Back to my talking points. Number 4 on my list: making excuses to avoid doing what's necessary. And by necessary, I mean learn your fundamentals. This is probably the one thing I am most guilty of. So back then, I started my creative journey with drawing in a manga/anime style. This was the one thing which inspired me most to keep drawing. I had all these great ideas, but got super frustrated when I realized my skill level is just not high enough. So I knew right away what needs to be done and ignored it anyway. I knew I should have studied more anatomy and real proportions, but I was too stubborn to do it. I just wanted to create all these cool things and not be stuck with studying basics. And here's what comes to play: what I would name a certain artistic arrogance, which is quite frankly really ironic, because if you don't know any fundamentals, you're in no place to be arrogant. And I know this sounds weird to talk about being arrogant as an artist, but it's not something you do consciously. But hear me out. You may literally be stuck in a stage of thinking you're above learning the basics. And I'm not proud to admit this, but I'm trying to reflect my behavior, and I was definitely focused on ideas I couldn't even carry out. I thought it's enough to every now and then maybe draw a hand or two, and that should do the job, right? But looking back, I kinda lied to myself and was really impatient and wanted to do the big things right away. It's really beneficial to take a step back, become more humble, and tackle what you know is necessary to reach your goals. It may be studying color theory or learning to stylize realism, or maybe it's storytelling in your art. Whatever it is for you, there's always something we should add onto our library of basic knowledge. I want my last talking point to be positive, and this might sound weird to you, but stop making excuses and see yourself becoming successful. This excuse, of course, includes the famous imposter syndrome. We've all been there. Artists or not, a lot of people are dealing with this, giving themselves negative prep talk. It's this inner demon telling us you're just not worthy, you'll never become a real artist, others are miles ahead of you, good luck with trying to catch up. Stop. Stop right there. Give yourself a chance. This kind of self-sabotaging does nothing. No, it doesn't do nothing. It will hold your potential back. And I believe everyone has potential to create great things. Be it in art or social skills, doesn't matter. You can do it. Allow yourself to dream about where you want to be in 10 years. And allow yourself to come up with a positive image of this future self. Look back at what you already accomplished in your life. That doesn't necessarily mean with art, but I'm so sure you had major successes and milestones in your life with problems you overcame. Oftentimes, we tend to talk things down, but once you realize where you started, how often you already struggled, and how much you changed, you can apply this mentality to your relationship with art. To give you an example, I always struggled with coloring. I mean, besides from struggling with any any other thing, but color was a major weakness. I had no idea how color theory works and how I can create harmonic, colorful artwork. So I circled back and forth between trying to color, not being satisfied, telling myself I should just maybe not use color at all and stay with only graphite pencil drawings. And now look at what I'm doing. I never ever imagined myself ending up with creating these super colorful, vibrant drawings. But I try to actively go into the direct opposite of what I thought my weakness is. So instead of using no color because I couldn't see myself being successful with it, I told myself, you know what? I'm gonna use all the colors now. I have this inner punk inside me sometimes and an urge to go against the grain, so I try to use this for my advantage and expanding my horizon with these super vibrant drawings, and that to me is a success. I have to say I'm really proud of myself for jumping into a bit of uncertainty with this drawing. Not everything worked out 100% as I wanted it to, but I see it this way. If there is at least one thing I can take away, one thing I learned about myself and my abilities after I accomplished an artwork, it is a success for me. And I learned that I absolutely love drawing the galaxy theme with all these colors. I learned about a new material I never used before, and I learned how I can be more creative with a reference photo, as well as letting go a bit more of realism. I hope you enjoyed this drawing process, and let me know what you think about the topics of this video. You are more than invited to agree, disagree, and just welcome to share your honest opinion. Until next time, and don't forget, stop making excuses.